Before we get started, we just wanted to say thank you to Old Republic Surety for sponsoring this episode of Let's Get Surety, as well as NASBP's virtual seminars for the fourth year in a row. For more information on Old Republic Surety, visit www.orsurety.com. Now, on to our show.
You're listening to Let's Get Surety. Let me hear your bonding talk with Kat Shamapande.
Hey everyone, it's Kat Shamapande. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Let's Get Surety. Today we're going to be talking about an important topic, particularly as we're coming into the new year. We're going to be talking about assuredness in today's global surety market. And to do that today, I have with me my co-host, Martha.
Hey, Kat.
A general counsel here at NASBP. Thanks so much for being on, Martha.
My pleasure to be here with you and Todd.
And our guest today, and Martha just gave you a clue, it's Todd Feuerman, and he's the director and chair of Construction Services Group at Ellin and Tucker. Thanks so much for being on with us, Todd.
Thank you, Kat, and thank you, Martha, for having me today.
Before we dive into this topic, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, Todd, and about Ellin and Tucker?
Sure. Well, Ellin and Tucker, we're a large regional CPA firm located in Baltimore, Maryland, and we handle many construction companies, actually in the Mid-Atlantic and across the United States, represent them in terms of traditional accounting and tax support, but I tend to do a lot of work in the consultation area with construction companies. I've been with the firm for about 35 years, and I'm a senior partner with the firm.
So we're going to start off today talking about assuredness in today's global surety market. It's been an interesting couple of years, so there's been a lot of change.
Yeah, there has been a lot of change in the construction marketplace and even in the surety marketplace. In 2019, the year ended off pretty strong, and then before you know it, by February of 2020, we're kind of knee-deep in COVID. We're starting to work our way out, and things are actually on the uptick outside of the issues that we're all seeing in our day-to-day worlds here.
Todd, how are you accounting, if at all, for the Omicron variant that seems to be making its way around the world now?
That's a great question, Martha, and I'll try to stick to the just the topic as it relates to construction, because this Omicron variant is just so new to the marketplace. I don't know that really the professionals like myself that are out there, and even within the surety industry, have really gotten our arms around what that means in terms of how that will affect construction, the marketplace, et cetera. But here's what I can tell you, is that the construction marketplace is a very, very resilient marketplace. It's the industry that just keeps on going through all the issues that we've been faced with. So what I anticipate happening here is that it'll just be business as usual, that they will make whatever necessary health adjustments that they need to for workforces, but the construction marketplace will just keep rolling along.
Well, and you mentioned, Todd, their workforces. I think that, leads me to think about the labor shortage.
Yeah, Kat, when you talk about the labor shortage, this isn't anything new to the construction industry. The labor shortage that was out there prior to COVID was not great, and it continues to get somewhat exacerbated from COVID. We find that the workforce in some areas of the United States has been a little slow to get back to work. But here again, these construction companies, resilient, they work through it, they do more with less, and they are dealing with this labor issue the same way that they have in the past, with a couple of caveats, Kat.
Yeah.
One of those caveats is that we are seeing that because of the competitive nature of trying to secure new employees, you're seeing construction companies offer different types of incentives to bring workers back into the workplace. You're seeing signing bonuses. You're seeing an increase in hourly wages, especially for field personnel. And you're seeing other types of benefits that may not have been out there prior to COVID becoming more commonplace within the construction industry.
Have the contractors that you work with said that there has been an enhancement in their workforce because of these changes. Have they seen an enhancement yet, or are they hoping to see it?
And Martha, when you say enhancement, are you referring to an increase in their workforce, or why don't you explain a
I
little bit
meant
more
by
what you
an
mean by
increase in
enhancement?
their workforce and getting the field personnel that they need to staff the projects.
Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying that. I would say no, there really hasn't been an enhancement in the workforce. The workforce has been as stable as it can be. And the single biggest challenge that most construction companies have, whether it's in the mid-Atlantic region, the central part of the United States, or even the West Coast, has been to fill those skilled labor forces. Just the digging of a ditch or the basic rudimentary skills, that's fine. They're able to find people like that. But the actual skilled workforce, the ones that are perhaps requiring a little bit more experience, has still been very difficult to find.
Well, and those labor challenges have presented or been a focus for underwriting and surety credit. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say within the surety industry, when you take a look at what the surety firms are looking at right now, they're very focused on concerns that are out there with labor, but they do understand that it's out there. They've been dealing with that piece for a long time. The sureties are getting a little bit concerned with regards to materials and the supply chain issue that's out there, which would really bring me to everything that we've all seen. I mean, just think about it for a sec. We just had Black Friday a few weeks back. I don't know about you, Kat, and you, Martha, but when I went into a store, it wasn't much of a Black Friday. There were no real deals going on. It's not like the inventory was so dramatic there that you said, hey, I got so much to pick from. Well, those issues that we see in our normal day, it's the same thing within construction. So where are the sureties really concerned right now? They're concerned on a few factors. One, labor, as we talked about. Two, very concerned about material supply chain issues. And specifically as it relates to timing of projects, material escalation clauses that they're encouraging their contractors to put into the actual contract provisions, whether or not there would be any delay claims or things of that nature that would negatively impact the company and potentially create risk for the surety firm. And then also the surety is just very concerned about the overall financial health in general of construction companies as we're starting to see companies come out of this COVID environment.
Yeah, I know that material price escalation has been, all over the news articles and things like that. It's a pretty big concern. Are there specific areas or specific spaces it's affecting more than others in the construction industry?
Yeah. Kat, when we take a look at that, a lot of the materials that are used in the construction industry, if we just think about ground up construction within the commercial marketplace, and we think about bridges, we think about sports complexes that are being built. If you really focus on the fundamental material components that go into them, they're all the same. It's steel, it's brick, it's mortar, it's drywall, it's electrical, mechanical equipment, those types of things. So if you look at the top segments of just materials, that strain is really, it'll hit in every spot. So really it's across the board. There's no specific area where one industry has been less touched by it. And the reason is also, if you think about the way construction works, if you're in the process of building a building and say one of your subcontractors does not have a supply chain issue, they're still at the mercy for how the job is supposed to proceed. So they could be at the mercy for the electrical contractor to get supplies, steel fabricator to get their steel in, drywall companies to get the drywall. So it's like a ripple effect. You're just dropping the penny into the pond and it just ripples itself out.
Do you think your contractors are anticipating more litigation in the next year or two because of all these various issues?
I would say that they will probably have to work a little bit closer with the project owners in terms of keeping jobs moving and making sure that clauses within contracts are a little bit more liberal than they've been in the past. And Martha, what I'm seeing and a lot of questions that I get is, what can we do in terms of materials? Let's just say that for a second, labor is just labor. It's always going to be an issue, continue to be an issue. We see it here within our company. All of our clients see it. So that issue's out there. But specifically, as it relates to materials and how jobs move themselves along, we're asked all the time, what do we do about it? And that would be from the construction company. We would say, well, just put a material escalation clause in there. Just put some language in the contract that allows this thing to take care of itself. There are big problems with that. Not easy to do. And so what we're seeing, though, is that there is some language in there, delay clauses as it relates to materials. It's just a little bit more liberal. So to respond in summary to your question, will we see additional litigation from this? I'm not sure we'll see additional litigation from this, but we will see some additional discussion as they're going through the job. The litigation, the claims and things like that are out there. I think it will continue to be from the same methods and factors that we've seen in the past.
Okay.
And I think, Todd, you also mentioned with the third thing you mentioned with the surety concerns was around margins. Was that right? And margin reduction?
Yeah, around margin reduction. And Kat, what we're seeing with that is the margins right now, where it used to be in 2019, we actually were seeing an uptick in profit margins for construction companies. And when I talk about construction companies, I'm just talking globally. So that relates to a general contractor and a specialty subcontractor without going into a specific niche within the specialty subcontractor. We were seeing an uptick in the margins, okay? And then even as COVID started to hit, we were still seeing that uptick in there for two reasons. One, because the backlog that we went into in 2020 was an older backlog, so the margins were a little bit higher. Two, you had companies that were not able to weather the storm, the COVID storm. And so you had some contractors that were falling out, so it allowed a little bit more flexibility for margins. Now what are we seeing? What we're seeing now, prior to this infrastructure bill that just got passed, what are we seeing? We're seeing where margins are getting squeezed again, where you have more contractors bidding on jobs. And so where you used to have, say, 5 or 6 contractors bidding on a job, there could be 10 or 15. Where you used to have contractors that were just from your geographic area, now they're from outside the geographic area. And contractors are fighting to build their backlogs back. So you combine all those things together, that competitive nature and the spirit that's in the construction industry, we are seeing a shrinkage of margins in general.
That's interesting too, as you were mentioning the infrastructure bill and the effect that's going to have as we're moving forward through 2022. Do you have any predictions about what that's going to look like as we move through the year?
Well, I think as it relates to 2022, we're still going to have to see how all that trickles down. A lot of things that happen in DC, it just takes a little bit for it to actually hit the market. It's not like you sign a bill, you turn a switch on and go, boom, all these construction projects are out. It's going to take some time to actually get that into the marketplace. There are many steps that will happen. When will we start to see that happen? From everything I'm seeing, hearing, and reading, we will probably see that sometime in Q3 or Q4 of 2022. So we're probably still a good 9 to 12 months off before it actually starts to hit the streets, so to speak, especially as it relates to big construction projects. There is just a lot that goes into it. So when we talk about the infrastructure bill, and a lot of the infrastructure bill related to road infrastructure, bridge infrastructure, water and sewage infrastructure, it takes a lot of engineering, architectural design, and a lot of things that need to happen first before it actually hits the folks that are actually digging in the trenches, so to speak.
Do you think that the robust infrastructure bill will impact the use of P3 funded big projects?
Yeah, Martha, P3 used to be the sexy term out there with these large construction projects. But actually what we're starting to see, and especially I would say the P3 projects that are out there and that will continue to be out there will really be taken over by very large construction companies. The reason that is because the larger construction companies have the wherewithal and have the financial resources to handle the ups and downs of a P3 contract. For a middle market contract, and when I say a middle market contractor, if we think about it, if you have a contractor that says does between $10 and $100 million and then $100 to say $500 million, those contractors will likely stay away from the P3 contracts because they can't handle that within their backlog. They can't handle the risk that's involved. They can't handle the delays, the upfront capital, et cetera. So do I see an uptick in P3 contracts specifically as it relates to the infrastructure bill? Not necessarily for the general construction economy.
That's interesting. Yeah, so we've talked about a number of different surety concerns as we're moving forward. You kind of touched on COVID, labor shortages, supply chain issues. Are there any other major surety concerns you see in the construction space?
Yeah, I think another major concern that's in the construction space, and here again, it has really been the same over the past couple of years, is just succession planning. When we take a look at construction companies that are out there, from the research that I've done, from working with clients, you basically have, say, 70, 80% of all construction companies that are out there. And I'm not talking about public construction companies. I'm talking about privately held construction companies are at a point where they are ready for the succession planning. And so the surety firms are a little bit concerned about that. And so from a succession planning standpoint, Kat and Martha, what we're going to see is construction companies wanting to take a more detailed look into what is a succession plan. Will the company be passed on to the next generation? Can the next generation handle it? Will it be passed on to key management? Can the key management handle it? Can they handle the financial parameters and requirements around that? Or will the company just be sold? And so you're really seeing a mix of those three things out in the marketplace: sale of construction companies, transition to family, and transition to key management. And that is a very, very big concern for the surety companies right now.
What are the major steps a surety company wants to see in ownership transition from a construction company?
Well, a surety, just like a bank, just because of the nature that we all sit in these ivory towers versus the folks that actually are out there in the field doing all the heavy lifting, so to speak, the surety company would love for someone like myself to hand them a document and say, here's the document, Mr. or Mrs. Surety Company. This is exactly how we're going to do it. In a perfect world, that would be great. We don't live in a perfect world. So what would the surety company like to see and understand is just what is the general plan? What is the timeline? Have you thought it through? And where do you see this going? And I would have to tell you, for construction companies that have their act together, they have thought this through. When you have construction owners that are, say, in their mid-60s, they have thought through what are the next steps. And when you look at the top tier construction companies, and I'll regress for a second, the surety market is probably controlled, probably 60, 70% of the entire surety market is controlled by the top 10 surety firms. And their customers generally are the top construction companies that are out there. So they have these plans that are in place. They may be documented to a point, but for the most part, the surety firms just ask the owners to make sure that they understand what the plan is, what the timing is. And most importantly, Martha, most important here is, does the company live or die from succession? Does it live or die from the financial constraints that are put out there? And what ultimately impacts the bonding capacity for companies that go through a transaction, that go through a redemption? That is key and fundamental that needs to be looked at by all construction companies with their surety firm.
Probably with a good CPA as well.
Yeah. Hey, Kat, we don't need to put the plug in there for Ellin and Tucker, but I would say that, well, that's a little bit self-serving if I were to say that. But outside of a firm like ours, there are many wonderful construction CPA firms that are out there. And here again, to have the expertise of a seasoned, experienced, CPA-centric construction firm is critical. It's critical for the larger middle market construction firms that are out there. For the lower tier companies that are out there, they can probably get away with not having that level of expertise. But as succession planning kicks in, as material issues continue to present themselves, an experienced CPA is really needed to help guide along.
Yeah. I mean, when you're considering the major issues that you've kind of laid out here, I can't see how you'd want to enter into it without one.
Yeah, that is true, Kat. We like to think that a qualified CPA firm is a must. And sometimes I will tell you that we do see that when companies are not advised properly by a qualified CPA firm specific to construction, there are certain things that are missed. And so, Martha, we had talked a bit about the surety's concern with succession planning and how redemptions are done. For someone who doesn't understand what a redemption means to the balance sheet of a construction company, and then how that impacts surety, how that impacts pre-qualification, and how that impacts bonding, that could be a very slippery slope to get involved in. So that's why, I come back to it. Experience is just a great thing to have on your side.
I think
No,
that.
go ahead, Kat.
Go ahead, Martha. I was going to say it just really leads you to the importance of having a bond producer with you to help guide you through all of this and discuss these issues.
Yeah, I think one thing that we've seen is that proactive communication with the underwriters and with the surety firm has probably been so important, more important than it's ever been, just because of the issues everyone's dealing with. And so you're right, having a qualified partner in that area is critical. And there are some fabulous surety firms that are out there that are hungry for business. Just as a general note, when we look at the surety industry over the past year, the surety industry had a great year.
Mm-hmm.
The average losses across the board for the top 10 were somewhere under 20%. You did have a few firms too that actually were able to recoup some of the reserves that they put into place. So for example, a company like Chubb actually had, instead of actually having losses recorded, they had gains recorded because they had reserved for worser situations that actually happened in the market. And that would be the same with a company called Argonaut Group, which is a top 10 surety firm too. They actually had a negative loss ratio, which meant that they were able to bring in some reserves for over accruing losses that they thought would hit during COVID.
Todd, if you had a bond producer come to you and say, what advice should I give to my contractors in this uncertain environment? What are a few of the top factors you would cite for them to advise their contractors?
Martha, I would say from those top factors, I'd start off by saying maybe there's a top 3 or top 5. We'll have to see where I land, somewhere in between 3 and 5 right now, so we'll see how that goes. But I'd say some of the top things that a construction company should pay very, very close attention to, and their surety firm would tell them this, is 1, financial health of their organization, making sure that their finances and the health of the balance sheet is in place. 2, that they have proper senior personnel in place that can properly handle bidding, estimating, and project management. Money is made in 2 places in construction. 1, at the time of bid, to make sure that your bid is correct. And then 2, your money's made out in the field, your ability to produce. So that's 2. 3, the ability to make probably one of the biggest decisions that you can make. And that's something that's called the go versus no-go decision. Meaning, do we go for this project and submit the bid, or is it a no-go? Critical, because one bad job can just pull you completely under. I mean, one catastrophic project can be the end. That it can just be over unless the company gets back to 1 that I said, the financial health to get you through it. And so that's 3 items. The 4th item, and I think I am actually going to get to 5, so I think we're going to be in good shape. I promise not to go past 5. Okay, so the 4th item. The 4th item would be to make sure that they do have a proper relationship with a surety firm, making sure that they have a proper line of credit. I use that generically, but I'd say a proper surety line, bonding line, whatever the proper verbiage would be, a proper bonding line in place to handle opportunities that will hit, whether they hit because of the infrastructure bill, general economy, warehouse production for folks like Amazon, et cetera. So the proper bonding capacity out there. And then the fifth, it relates to the financial health, is just to make sure that you have a proper banking relationship, to make sure that there's a line of credit that's available there for you, and to make sure that you have what a lot of financial experts like to call dry powder. Dry powder meaning that you have powder to be able to move in, to stabilize projects, to get them up and going, and that bank and bonding relationship is really critical.
That's great, Todd. Thank you so much for sharing with us. I think that's given us all some good perspectives as we're looking forward to a new year and where we're going in 2022 and what the surety market and construction industry are going to look like.
Well, thank you, Kat, and thank you, Martha. You can tell I'm pretty passionate about construction. It's a great place to be. It's one of those industries that just stands the test of time. You get to see it every day, so to speak, because it just lasts. And so I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and it's always great to talk about surety.
Yeah, it's been great talking to you. We'll have to have you back again sometime.
Great, I look forward to it.
You've been listening to Let's Get Surety, brought to you by the National Association of Surety Bond Producers. For more information about the NASBP and its members, visit nasbp.org.
Before we go, we just wanted to say thank you again to Old Republic Surety for their generous support in sponsoring this episode of Let's Get Surety. For more information on Old Republic Surety, visit www.orsurety.com.